Hey y'all, and welcome back to Deelish and Dare. It's finally fall. I've been waiting for this season for a long time. It's my favorite one. I've really been enjoying all those fall cool days. And when I think about fall, one of the first things I think about are pumpkins. So today we're going to make a couple of pumpkin recipes that are going to be really delicious and really simple. I think you'll enjoy them. The first one we're going to make is a pumpkin butter. So if you've ever had apple butter or pear butter, you know what I'm talking about. Except this one is going to have a focus on pumpkins. We're going to mix this up together and it's going to be really good on toast or on muffins. You could even top a cheesecake with it. And it does make about 5 half pints, so you might want to share. Just remember, when we make this pumpkin butter, we're not going to preserve it to go up on the shelf for a long time. You'll need to put it in the refrigerator and go ahead and use it. So this would make a lovely gift to share with somebody. So let's go ahead and get started. First, we're going to put in some pumpkin. This is a 29-ounce can of pumpkin puree. Now make sure when you go shopping, you get the pumpkin puree, because it'll be sitting up there right next to the pumpkin pie filling, and we don't want pumpkin pie filling. We just want the pumpkin puree. That's what we're going to be using in all our recipes today. All right, so we're going to get our pumpkin in there. Oh, excuse me. Next, we're going to add apple juice. This is about 3/4 of a cup. Then we're going to add our spices. I went ahead and pre-measured them, but this has ginger, cinnamon, cloves, and nutmeg. And finally, we're going to add the sugar. This is going to be 2 cups of sugar. All right, we're going to stir this up. Get it mixed up really well. Then we're going to take it over to the stove and we're going to get it up to a boil. Then we're going to turn the temperature down and we're going to let it simmer for about 30 minutes. This is going to make sure that all those flavors meld together really nicely, and it's going to cook down and it's going to make a nice flavorful spread for all your fall goodies. So I think we've about got it mixed up. Let's just move on over here to the stove. Okay, the hard part is done. We've got this turned up on high. We're going to let it come to a boil. We're going to turn it down and we're going to let it simmer for about 30 minutes. And it's right here where I'm doing all my other work, so I'll be able to keep an eye on it and keep it stirred up every once in a while. So while we're getting ready with this, let's move on to our next recipe. Okay, now we're going to make a sweet corn and pumpkin bisque. The hardest part that we're going to do with this is put something in the blender and strain it out. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to add 1 can of sweet cream corn and 2 tablespoons of chopped onion. Alrighty, so I'm going to turn this on and I'm going to blend it up well so that we can strain it into our pot. Okay, that looks pretty good. We're just going to put it through this fine mesh strainer. See if we can get it in there. And what we're trying to do is get the liquids out so that we'll have that good corn and onion flavor, but we don't have the little solid pieces that are in there. Now if you notice, this is kind of thick. It's not going to just sort of strain itself. We're going to kind of have to help it along just a little bit. But the product that we're going to end up with is going to be a very smooth cream that we're going to have. And we're just going to put this other to the side. We won't need that anymore. So this takes just a minute. Like I say, this is probably the hardest part, is just putting it through the blender and then straining it out. If you notice in there, it looks like in my strainer, it's starting to get a little dry looking. That means that we're doing a good job over here getting the liquids out. Now I'm going to pause for just 1 sec and reach over here and stir up our pumpkin butter. I don't think it's going to take it very long before that starts to boil, and then we'll be able to turn it down. All right, I'm mashing this really good, and there's still a little bit of the liquid that's coming out. Okay, I think we have just about got all the liquid out of this that's going to come out. So we don't want to make a big mess. All right, let me check this out again. The pumpkin butter is almost about to start boiling enough that we're going to have to turn it down. You can see the pumpkin butter, you can see the little air pockets coming up, and the last thing we want to do is burn it, so we're going to keep a real good eye on that. Now we're going to add in some pumpkin. This is about a 15-ounce can. Now we're going to add the broth. This is about 14 ounces. It calls for chicken broth. You could use vegetable broth if you'd like to. Let me stir this up just a little bit. Okay. I think that's at a good temperature. I'm going to turn that down and keep an eye on it. You see why I've got it so close now. Now we're going to add a little bit of orange juice. This is going to add a nice citrusy note. This is coriander, salt, nutmeg, and black pepper. These are going to be our spices for it. And next we're going to have a little cornstarch. The cornstarch is going to help thicken it up some. All right, I've got everything in here. Now we're going to turn this up on high. And we're going to bring this to a boil. All right, this is going to need to come to a boil. Then we're going to turn it down, and we're going to let this simmer for about 5 to 10 minutes. And now we're going to move on to our third and final recipe. How fast was all that? Okay, the next one we're going to make is a creamy pumpkin sauce. This one's going to come together just about as fast as the other two did, and it's going to be really, really good. Now, the first thing that it calls for is to heat in some oil in a skillet and stir in some shallots until soft, and it's going to take about 10 minutes to do that. Well, I went ahead, can't see it very well, but I've already sauteed this, so that much of it is done. I will tell you I couldn't find any shallots, so I used the green spring onions. I used about 3 onions. I used the white parts and not really any of the stemmy, leafy green parts. This is going to give it that slight, mellowy onion taste without it being quite as pungent as onion. So if you can't find exactly what's in the recipe, just improvise. All right, so let's get this turned on. All right, it's going to take it just a few minutes to heat back up again. And what we're going to do is put 2 tablespoons of butter in here. We're going to need to let that melt. So while the butter is melting, I'm going to keep an eye on what I have behind me, but we can talk a little bit about pumpkins for just a few minutes if you want to. When we think about pumpkins, lots of times we think of it in terms of it being a vegetable. But in reality, pumpkins are really a fruit. They're a part of the squash family. All of the parts of the pumpkin can actually be eaten. You can eat the fleshy part that we normally eat. You can take the seeds out, wash them, and roast them in the oven, which are really, really good. You can even eat the flowers that are on there. If you've ever had squash flowers, you can do the same thing with pumpkin flowers. So pretty much the whole thing of a pumpkin is edible. Now when you go to the store, if you're looking for a pumpkin to eat, you'll probably find this time of the year a whole bunch of pumpkins in there. A lot of those are going to be decorative pumpkins. Now you can eat those. It's not dangerous to you or anything like that, but they're not really bred for eating purposes. They're more bred in terms of decorative purposes. So if you eat a pumpkin like that, it's going to be extra stringy, it's going to be extra watery, and it's not going to have as much flavor. So if you decide that you want to eat a pumpkin, what you need to do is look for something that's called a sugar pumpkin or a pie pumpkin. Those are actually going to be sweeter and denser, and they're going to be more flavorful. So you can certainly do that. If you want to go the short route like we just did today, you can always get pumpkin that comes from a can. Now, pumpkins are really healthy for us as well. They've got a lot of vitamins in them. They have vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin E, antioxidants. They're full of fiber. They're just a powerhouse of nutrition. And if you have just plain pumpkin, they don't have a lot of calories in them either, only about 50 calories per cup. So you could eat quite a bit of pumpkin and get quite a lot of nutritional value out of them. It's just all the other goodies that we add to them that make them not quite so healthy. And as you can see, pumpkins are pretty versatile. We can make all kinds of things with them. We can make soups. We can roast them in the oven. We can make all kinds of breads, pies, muffins. There's pretty much no limit to the things that you can do with pumpkins. So I hope some of these recipes are helping you think about some things you might want to try at home. Okay, our butter's just about melted, so we're going to add 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. We're going to sprinkle that right in there, and I'm going to trade out my spoon for a whisk. We're kind of going to mix this all up. And if you've ever heard of a roux, that's kind of what we're making right now. This is going to be a flavorful roux. It has the butter in it, has a little bit of oil. It has the, not the shallots, but the green onions. And we just want to stir that up in there and get it mixed in really, really well. Alrighty. Okay, the next thing we're going to do, we're going to put in some cream. This is about a cup of cream. Then we're going to add a little bit of salt and a little bit of cinnamon. All right, now we're going to mix this up just a little bit. We want everything to incorporate really, really well. I'm turning up the heat just a little bit. So this is going to help it to mix well, and it's going to help it to thicken. It's going to help those flavors to come together. All right, and while that's doing that, I'm going to step back. Remember, we're trying to keep an eye on all this. I want to give everything a little stir so that it doesn't burn. I know you can't smell this, but it's starting to smell really, really good. All right, let's turn that down even just a little bit more. Okay, guys, I think we've got it mixed up pretty well. Now we're going to add some more of the ingredients. Here we go with pumpkin again, our favorite ingredient for the day. All right, I think we've about got that. All right, now remember, this is a pumpkin sauce. So we want just the right thickness of it, something that's going to stick to what we want the sauce to go on. So let's get this stirred in, and then we're going to start adding our chicken broth to it. Now this would be really good on some ravioli, some cheese ravioli, some pumpkin ravioli. Today I happen to have some egg noodles, and we're going to pour just a little bit of this on the egg noodles. Okay, we've got that mixed in. Now we're going to add about half of our chicken broth. Okay, it's looking pretty good. It's still a little bit thick, so we're going to add a little bit more, and that's what you can keep doing, just adding a little bit more until it gets to the thickness that you're looking for. And we are going to let this simmer a little while once we get it to a good texture. So you may end up having to add just a little bit more along, because as it simmers and the steam is released, that means that this is going to get a little bit thicker. So we're just going to have to keep our eye on this like we have the others. Okay, I think that's looking pretty good. So what we're going to do, we're going to let this sit here. We're going to simmer the sauce for about 5 to 10 minutes. And when we get through, we're going to stir in some sage and some thyme. Now this recipe calls for fresh sage and fresh thyme. I didn't happen to have any, but I did have the dried variety on there. So you can certainly interchange fresh herbs with dried herbs. Just remember that the dried ones are a lot stronger than the fresh herbs, so only use about 1/3 of what it calls for. So for example, if it called for a tablespoon of something, a tablespoon of fresh herbs, we know that 3 teaspoons is a tablespoon, so only use about 1 teaspoon of the dried. But we're not going to put this in here quite yet. We're going to give this just a few more minutes, and then we're going to add our herbs to it. So let's come back over here and let's look at what we have going on one more time. Okay, this pumpkin butter is looking really good, and it's smelling really good too. We're going to give that just a little while longer. In the meantime, I'm going to give our bisque a stir, and now we're going to add a really decadent part to it. We're going to add some heavy cream to this as well. So we're going to pour this back in here. We don't want it to boil, but we do want it to get hot. So we're just going to let this cook for a little while longer. Let it get warm through. We're going to give our pumpkin butter a little while longer to simmer, and we're also going to give our sauce a little while to simmer. So give us just a few minutes and let all this stuff cook up just a little bit more, and we'll show you all the good stuff we have going on. Okay, all of our goodies are done. They're going to be delicious all together, or you could use them individually. So let's get started with some of the bisque. When you do yours at home, you can use a little bit smaller pot. All right, we have that. Next, we're going to add a few of the egg noodles. And again, some ravioli would be really good with this. Any kind of pasta would make it really yummy. So let's just get us a little bit here. And we're going to put some of the sauce on it. Perfect. Okay, and finally, we're going to get a little bit of the pumpkin butter. I think we pretty much have a whole meal here. Oh, and it's still so hot. All right, so let's give it a try and see how it is. Let's try the bisque. That is really, really good. I think you'll enjoy the flavors that are in that. Let's try our pumpkin sauce. That's really good too. You get that little pumpkin taste that's in there. You can taste the herbs that we put. It's very tasty. And I like the noodles that I used. I think I would like the ravioli even better. All right, let's try a little bit of the pumpkin butter. Y'all, I think that might be my favorite one. That has all the flavors of fall in it. Something that you'll love, something that you can share with your friends when you make up a batch, something just to bring in the fall season. So I hope you've enjoyed our visit today as we've talked a little bit about pumpkins and made some pumpkin recipes. And if you have any questions about cooking or preserving foods or nutrition, just give me a call here at the Dare County Cooperative Extension Service at 252-473-4290. See you next time.